guys, Liana here, Mountain Monday again, so you know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And breathe out. Now we're all at peace, right? Okay, we're all at peace. The topic for Mountain Monday today is intelligence versus wisdom. Knowing your Dungeons and Dragons is good for you. Yes, intelligence versus wisdom. And when I was a kid, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons back in the 6th grade. Because it was awesome, and okay, fact about me, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons because I liked the dice. I thought they were cool. It's like, you know, a dice, the only dice I'd seen before had 6 sides. There was one that had 20 sides, or one that had 8 sides. This was marvelous. This was marvelous to me. I thought this was wonderful. So that's why I started playing D&D. And there, you know, Dungeons and Dragons has an intelligence score, which is used for wizards. And that was the first Dungeons and Dragons class I ever played. We called it a sorceress back in the 6th grade because the guys I was playing with insisted a girl couldn't be a wizard. So we had to, and witch, they thought, this is cute in retrospect, witch they thought sounded bad, so they couldn't call me a witch, because this was way before Harry Potter, right? Witch just sounded bad. So sorceress. I was a sorceress. And the main score for wizards, or, you know, back in the 6th grade, a sorceress, was intelligence. And as I started playing Dungeons and Dragons and, you know, got older, I started experimenting with classes and more, you know, I started liking the cleric class. And then was it 3.5 ed that put the above level 18 extra abilities in? I think so. Because that just made everything 1,000 times more awesome for clerics. Clerics and rogues got pretty amazing late game abilities to try to encourage people to continue playing really long games. So we can summon like elementals and all this crazy stuff as clerics, and it was awesome. But it got me thinking about what actually is the difference between wisdom and intelligence, and there actually is a difference. And, you know, it is up there. Why? Oh, who's eating me? Oh, hello. I'm gonna skin that. So intelligence is, you know, raw intellectual ability. And you can be intelligent without being wise. And you can be wise without being intelligent. Wisdom is, to me, the ability to put what you know into things that, you know, benefit not just yourself, but humanity as a whole. Oh, it was right there. Duh. And you don't have to have a ton of book learning to be wise. Wisdom comes from life experience. When I was a kid, people always used to say, well, Liana, you're book smart, but you're not street smart. Which, you know, was kind of funny to tell a kid in the ghetto that, because we were all pretty street smart. You know, and don't get me wrong, Canada doesn't have ghettos like the US does, but we do have our bad neighborhoods. So, you know, it was the whole thing is, well, you're book smart, but you're not street smart. And I was shy, so it was sort of easy to think that. But the one thing I didn't do is I never let, how do I put this? I never let myself believe I was better than people because I was smarter than people. And that's the wisdom kicking in. You know, that's the difference between wisdom and intelligence. Being better at one particular thing does not make you better than another person. And that's, you know, my whole life I've been interested in wisdom. You know, somebody like, although Einstein said some very, very wise things, but there are a great many scientists who are brilliant, 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 brilliant people. You know, Sheldon on Big Bang Theory, example of a guy who is very intelligent but not at all wise. Someone like Aristotle or Gandhi or someone like that has a great deal of wisdom. I mean, it's amazing that stuff that Aristotle wrote all that time ago is still relevant today. You know, you can still go back to Aristotle's ethics and philosophical stuff and get something from it. And I think the thing that is important to remember when you're dealing with the difference between wisdom and intelligence is that intelligence is facts are a lot easier to agree with. Wisdom is a trickier thing because, I mean, I remember thinking back to this one particular college professor who was quite a wise man. And he told me some things that I didn't accept at the time. I thought he was talking crazy talk. Now, I see that they were very wise things that he told me. And that's the difference. With wisdom, you're not always ready for it when you hear it. Unfortunately, I think we need a lot more wisdom in discussions about academic or intelligent issues. And that's why I wanted to talk about this thing today, because we need both. We need the raw data. We need someone clever enough to come up with the ideas. But then we need people wise enough to examine those ideas and look at them from multiple angles to try to see it. And that's the great benefit of wisdom, is that you can start looking at things from perceptions that aren't your own. And I used to be really, I want to be smart. I want to learn everything I can. I still like learning. I still really like learning, but I'm not as invested in being the smartest person in the room as I was, you know, when I was younger. Because I thought, you know, being smart was that thing I had, right? Couldn't win any athletic competitions, but smart, yeah, I could be smart. But I was never the smartest person in the room. There was always that person who specialized. You know, they were awesome in math, they were awesome in science, but, you know, English or history wasn't their strong suit. You know, so there was always that person who was better than me in every individual subject. But I took science, I took math, and I ended up with one of the highest overall grades in the entire school. I got some prize for that. Why did I just walk in? See, that was not wise. I'm gonna throw meat at you. And I think the thing about wisdom is and this is really ironic saying this now, wisdom is a skill in life that makes it okay for you to not have to win as long as you learn. And the problem with intelligence is if you're just intelligent and you have no wisdom, you get so invested in that being a part of yourself that you start actually losing the ability to learn optimally because your ego's in it. If you become wise, you can take in things from, you know, a place of the lack of ego. There's a lot of philosophical writings that talk about the lack of ego. Unfortunately, there's a lot of philosophical writings, especially that come out of the European tradition, that are absolutely, ironically, soaked in ego. And that's what's so compelling to me for studying European philosophy, is that I find that a lot of wisdom came from people who are not themselves necessarily well-rounded enough for me to consider them wise. Some of the wisest people I have ever met have been hip-hop artists. Not kidding. Because, I mean, these are people who weren't, you know, they weren't given crap. See, that was not a wise move. There we go. You know, these are people in hip-hop who have not been provided a conventional education, a formal education. And yet there's still, holy cow, the stuff that comes out of these men and women, it's poetry, man. And I love that stuff. I have learned so much from people who, for whatever reason, were not given a high-level education. It's really quite, there's a whole different type of knowledge, and it's I'm gonna get hit. It's decidedly lacking in BS, is what it is. You know, they don't have the pretty words. They don't have the words like heteronormative and problematic and stuff like that. People use those words because it's an indication of a college degree, right? Because that's where you learn that stuff. Or you're aping one. You're trying to sound smart. Well, people who, you know, are raised in less advantageous circumstances, whoopsie, are less invested in sounding smart. And I've taken that to heart. You know, there are some YouTubers who edit out their deaths. I clearly don't. And, you know, that was the wisdom versus intelligence thing. I mean, from intelligence point of view, it's better to seem good at gaming. It's better to not die. So you can come from a place of superiority. But, you know, I stopped and thought about it, and I'm like, well, the wisdom in me says that people need to know you're 100% authentic. Who just spotted me there? Doesn't matter. Ooh, get down. Oh, hey. The wisdom in me says that, well, people need to be able to trust that you're coming at them straight, right? Why did I do that? Because I wanted to try to shoot them in the nuts. These flamethrower guys, these heavies, are my Waterloo because they're just, you know. And the reality is, the idea of a game is to have fun. The idea of a game is not to be perfect, right? So what's the point in taking the extra time to edit out deaths? Everybody dies in a video game, especially when you're going through the first time. I mean, I realize how often I distrust seeing these Let's Players who are playing survival horror games trying to convince you they've played through it the first time and faking confusion in places when they've clearly gone through it at least once because they're not dying in the place everybody dies, right? I can't trust that YouTuber. I mean, if you're doing a walkthrough, fine, no problem. But if it's supposed to be a Let's Play and you're supposedly putting eyes on this for the first time, and it seems a lot like you've practiced, I don't trust your authenticity. And that's just my perspective, because I don't think people should be setting standards. I don't think the absolute best technical players should be setting standard in video games. Absolutely, there should be difficulty for people like, you know, professional fighting game players and you know, those people who get really awesome at particular games or types of games. I mean, I'm in awe of those people. But you're not gonna sell games on a mass level to pro players, right? I think maybe there should be games developed specifically for tournaments. You know, things with zero aim assist and you know, deliberately make it hard for those players who need that extra challenge. But for the rest of us, people want games that have an experience, that have moderate difficulty. You know, nobody wants a game to be too easy. But a lot of people I know play on easy mode for the story. And, you know, I'm personally glad, just for my own enjoyment, that, oops, what happened there? That we're getting away from this period that they thought they could deal with completion rates, get completion rates up by making the game easier. I don't think the problem for a lot of people is that games are too hard. I think that the problem is that games are too long. for most people. Those little 18-hour experiences sort of went the way of the dodo with open world games. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I think my counter's at 38 hours into Far Cry, and I think actually that's a bit low. I think that's this playthrough. But, you know, I'm glad I can spend so much time with this game. It's awesome the way this game continues after you finish the story. But am I expecting most people to put the time into Far Cry 4 that I did? No. You know, that's dumb. Of course, who said sound the alarm? There we go. I'm getting helped by some sort of animal. Thank you, animal. Whoops. Who did that? There we go. And oh no, my friend turned on me. See, I love that. I love that about this game. But people complain about Ubisoft games, including, you know, really good friends of mine whose opinions I expect. They complain about Ubisoft games because there's no difficulty setting. Some people are really invested in the idea of, you know, easy, medium, hard, or easy, normal, hard. And to me, stipulations like that, and this is where the intelligence versus wisdom kicks in. I mean, yes, playing on hard mode shows that you are a better player, or at least a more masochistic player than someone who plays on an easier difficulty. But demanding difficulty settings, just like demanding any other gameplay element, like you remember when it was multiplayer GTFO, like that hurt single player game development because people had to allocate resources into, oh crap, people had to allocate resources into multiplayer whether they wanted to or not. And a developer's skill may not necessarily be the multiplayer experience. I mean, that is, no doubt, its own specialty. Getting really good at multiplayer. Is Call of Duty known for their campaign? No, they're not. Ha ha. See, that's awesome. He got taken out by a jaguar or something like that. Leopard. No, 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 now he's coming for me. No! There, okay. So, you know, we get into these things. Everybody wants to be awesome at something, or they want to get, you know, they want to get cred for the thing that they're really good at. So it's like, it must have multiplayer. And I think we need more wisdom in gaming as opposed to an emphasis on raw skill in particular things, because multiplayer isn't for everybody. I love the idea of multiplayer. I don't love the actual experience of playing multiplayer because I've had too many people turn into completely different people while playing online games. And then I start wondering, is this happening to this guy only in the game, or is this guy actually always been an asshole and I just didn't know? And I've actually lost friendships over multiplayer because people just acted like such an asshole in multiplayer gaming that I couldn't look at them the same way anymore. Totally true. Especially friends' boyfriends or husbands. Oh God, significant others of my friends who find out I'm a gamer. Oh, and that drives me crazy. Like, I'm just a gamer, guys. I'm a gamer. I'm not a girl gamer. There's nothing unique about me in you know, I play Far Cry, so I like Far Cry. I may not enjoy Far Cry for the same reasons you do, but I enjoy the game. Don't play differently because there's a girl in the room. Holy cow, you have no idea how stupid that makes you look to the woman you're either trying to, you know, troll or impress. Either way, it doesn't do what you think it's gonna do. It just makes you look like a moron. And I'm saying, you guys, don't generalize for me. Okay, don't generalize for me. We need some wisdom on this point as well. You gotta understand that when people generalize, you don't have to freak out. Okay, there's a lot of reasons to generalize, and often they're mostly rhetorical devices that, you know, you want to make things as short as possible, and that's tough on some of these difficult situations. Because like I said before, I tried to write shorter pieces. I've tried to do shorter pieces, and the misunderstandings are legion. People read so much into what I say. So I've just sort of come to terms with the fact that the people that watch my stuff, they need a good 20 minutes. Because, you know, otherwise, if it's too oversimplistic, they start overthinking it and reading stuff into what I'm saying that just isn't there. And I really wish people would take a breath, find their mountain, and be as aware of what's not being said as what is being said, and vice versa. This assumption that, well, yeah, you said that, but you meant this, it's driving people away from discussions of games and game content, because people can't get close to something without being accused of something bad. And there's so much nuance in an art form like gaming, and I mean, that's why I freaking love it, because it's so complex. If someone didn't say it, then they're not secretly thinking it, period. You know, that's just, and that's a wisdom thing. That's understanding that, no, you can be sure someone meant something, and no, they really didn't. They really didn't. There's no big bad wolf hiding behind or hiding around every corner. Like, there isn't. I know it's more exciting to think there is, but most people just want to play games. They're not out to get anyone. And this paranoia has taken over gaming to the point that discussions of games have become completely dysfunctional. Because everybody's looking for the enemy around the corner. And that's not wise. Especially in an entertainment medium. Because, hey, guess what? It's games. Well, what are most people here to do? Play games, right? So that's a concept, that's Occam's razor right there. The simplest solution is most often the correct one. That's all people are doing. Just playing games. There's no ulterior motive. They're not trying to oppress anyone. They're not trying to take anyone away. They're just speaking about what will make the experience more fun for them. And that's all. And I think that if we can sort of listen to that, because I've had people say quite a bit, they say things that they find fun that I'm like, really? Really? You find that fun? I hated that part. But I factor that in. I'm like, all right, someone actually liked that, and that's why it's there. And I'm like, cool. Now I understand why that's in the game. I'm not going, oh, you're bad for liking that. Well, no, that's stupid. No, of course someone's not bad for liking something in a game. They're just different. They're not saying that thing they like isn't a dick move. They're just saying that, sometimes it's fun to explore that side. They know it's wrong, and that's why it's fun.
We are inbound from the south.
So I think the wisdom versus intelligence in gaming, to wrap this up, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to clear this fort this time. Pretty sure. But, the wisdom versus intelligence in gaming, let's just use a rocket launcher, make this real quick and cheerful. Did I miss? No, I missed. So yeah, wisdom versus, there we go. Oh, there's more. No, see, I got cocky. I was not wise. So that's I think the takeaway is that people don't play games to moralize. People don't play games to, get some sort of humanitarian medal. However, you can't be, from a business perspective, it is unwise to be so politically incorrect that you, how do I put this? That you alienate too many paying customers. And I think that's sort of the middle ground that we're looking for in, hey, I got all of them, yay, all clear, trophy. I think we have to be really careful that in trying to preserve the fun and trying to preserve the games we like, we don't alienate people who are coming at it from a different place. Now that being said, on the other side, we can't, how do I put this again? We can't just insist that something caters to us because it may not be feasible. I mean, the point for me, just selfishly, is body types, different body types in games. Where I'll go, you know, I want all different shapes, sizes, and colors of people in the game, and, you know, it was explained to me that every time we do a different character model, that costs money. And it's like, all right, then I still want that. I'm not going to stop wanting it. I'm not going to stop thinking it's a better product, but I understand that there are limitations. And hell, if your player base is 90% male, well, that's going to, whoops. Well, that is a valid statistic, you know. I'd like to make the argument, well, there are ways of keeping that 90% of the player base and expanding the, I hope I didn't do Tim Schafer math there. That did add up to 100, right? Let me back up, because I don't remember if I said 90 or 95%. Say your player base is 90% male and someone says to you, I want more diversity in female characters. Well, the reality is most men want that diversity too, but it's coming from a different place. So, okay, you can serve both the 90% and the 10%, but if you do it in a certain way, if you take sort of that, you know, noble middle ground, you can keep your 90%, not alienate any of that player base, and expand the 10% who wants to see something more diverse and make more money.
This is our land.
That's the sweet spot, right? That's what developers are looking for. And you're never gonna appease the you know, the radical fringe who just doesn't like anything unless it's exactly, you know, like them. You're not going to do that. So, you know, I think people need to be very careful complaining about stuff they're never going to like, because, you know, you're never going to like it. So why should someone listen to you if you're never going to like it? If you're a massive fan of a series, but you didn't like a particular thing, then I think that's where developers should sort of prick up their ears. You know, like for me, I love Dragon Age, massive fan of Dragon Age, which is why I was so disappointed in the elements of Dragon Age Inquisition. I felt the characters were, and not across the board, there were some characters that were great because they had a very defined story purpose. But there were a lot of characters I felt who were just representations of a certain political viewpoint, or worse, a particular sexuality. And that's the only real compelling reason why they were there. And I know you have to get the diversity into that game because you have to, RPGs are tricky that way. And I understand the difficulty, but I don't want to have a Dragon Age game where I really, really like one character and I just feel like somebody else is talking out their ass. I want that experience I got from Dragon Age Origins, where everybody, if you spent enough time with them, started making sense. That was the brilliance about that game. You got where Alistair was coming from. You got where Zevran was coming from. You got where Loghain was coming from. They were amazing, amazing characters. And I mean, Bioware's not going to listen to me now because it won a bunch of Game of the Year and they're being patted on the back by most, you know, political organizations with a lot more ability to make noise than me. But I'm a fan. I'm a long-term fan of these games. And I feel like they're slipping from what made them enjoyable. Because, I mean, it's funny. And this is games, I mean, this is no knock against Dragon Age. It's just that people played the game because of the hype, not really understanding that RPGs are, and especially that RPG that is so, you know, we're talking about an RPG, a Western role-playing game tradition that comes from a very, very different historical path than Japanese RPGs. And that's why when people are like, do you like RPGs? I'm like, Western RPGs or Japanese RPGs? Because Western RPGs I tend to like, Japanese RPGs depends on. And, you know, I think that when game developers more and more are listening to their critics and not listening to their fans. And I think, no. Oh, crap. I think that is moving in the wrong direction. Because I think that the fans first has to be more than lip service. Whee! Ooh, I came out of that by the skin of my teeth. And so that's what I mean about intelligence versus wisdom. Intelligence for a game developer is studying that balance sheet, right? Wisdom for a developer. And, you know, Dragon Age is a good example of this because they looked at their analytics instead of following their storytelling hearts and got smacked on Dragon Age 2 accordingly. But intelligence allows you to assemble all the pieces. Wisdom allows you to glue those pieces together in a way that's going to create something strong and enduring. And if you want to be completely cynical, you'd say that the success or failure of a game comes down more to the marketing and less to the quality of the game. So really, if, you know, they thought Dragon Age Origins was a strong product, they shouldn't have mucked with Dragon Age 2. They should have, well, and they only had a year and a half to do it, which was mucking with it. But, you know, if they think it's a strong game that should have sold better, well, market the shit out of it next time. Right? And this is a huge thing. We had this when I worked in television too. Oh, God. You'd have a meeting when you'd be doing the preliminary planning for something, and marketing would tell us what they could market and what they couldn't market. Instead of having innovative thinking and being creative in their own right, they're like, these are the tracks we're on. Pick a track or we're not going to market your stuff. That's the reality of creative entertainment right now. And that sucks, and that is something I think is important to keep in check for me. But that's wisdom versus intelligence again. Intelligence is, we're good at these things, so fall into these things. Wisdom says, well, that's only going to work for maybe 3 to 5 years, and then we're going to have to find another trick. So maybe we should start finding that next trick now so we're prepared. And Ubisoft's a great company for that. Oh, and there's my phone. That's telling me to stop. So, okay, let's find our mountain and contemplate the thought for today that got a bit rambly, and I always break my zen and I get it back. That's why Mountain Mondays are funny, because it's supposed to be meditative, and it ends up me going, rah! Okay, good. But that's Ginger Tao, right? That's the Tao of redheads. We find calm through our rage. And that's a stereotype, and that's why it's funny. So ready? Breathe in. And out. And I hear a tiger. And breathe in. And just ignore the tiger. And breathe out. Okay, guys, have a great week.